last council meeting, the subcommittees reviewed the specific feedback and considered the opportunity to include that feedback in the recommendations and action plan. Generally speaking, the subcommittees found the feedback relevant and of value. In some cases, the feedback provided further insight, identified gaps, and offered clarification to the recommendations. During the discussions of the feedback points, subcommittee members provided guidance to staff for incorporating it in the recommendations and action plan. And while we did not formally respond to feedback submissions, I would like to take this moment to thank all members of the public that took the time and thoughtfulness to provide written feedback, excuse me. It is very helpful in ensuring our work is complete and of high quality. Is there anything anyone on the council would like to add? Hector.
Yeah, Hector Dominguez. I want to, first of all, appreciate all the work that all the different committees have been doing. This space of artificial intelligence keeps evolving and evolves really fast. It's quite a challenge to develop uh, some guidance in general that are going to stand the time as technology evolves, as the needs evolve, as the all these different new risks and impacts evolve. And I just want to appreciate all that. I think the reading through all the initial recommendation and guidance, I feel proud of that work, definitely. But I also see that there is a lot of work to be done, particularly getting from the general guidance into a practical actions that will help state agencies, state employees to make the right decision at the right time with the constraints in terms of budget, in terms of capacity, in terms of talent around, in terms of infrastructure available to them, including digital infrastructure, both computing, but also in terms of documentation, talent, and literacy, and also in terms of policies, in terms of auditing systems around that, in terms of information registries that will make all this work and all this guidance from guidance move them into practice. So I just want to appreciate all that and just mention that there is still a lot of work to be done.
Thank you, Hector. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Thank you for that. So let's talk about the recommended action plan, which was provided as attachment 3.1 of the council meeting packet. This version provided in the council meeting packet is not completed staff work in terms of a draft action plan. Its purpose is to propose the outline for use in delivering the final recommendation action plan to the governor in February of 2025. The outline was provided with some context to illustrate the use of the outline. Content is not complete and should not be reviewed as if it is complete. I'm going to walk us through the document, and council are welcome to provide feedback at any point. Just raise your hand virtually or even shake it like this. I'll be able to see it at any point. And both the executive summary and the background section were updated from what was published in the draft framework. The executive summary highlights the formation and process of the council and describes the intent of the recommended action plan. The background section highlights high level risk and returns of AI. It also highlights Oregon's formation of a council in relations to the other states' task force or council. The scope section informs the reader what they can expect to find in the recommended action plan. So you have the vision statement, the guiding principles, and then the recommended action along with the suggested accountable role, estimated needed investments and resources, and then estimated time frame for accomplishing. After giving the reader that preview, the document then presents the vision statement and the guiding principles. During their last meetings, the subcommittees finalized the guiding principles. What is currently presented in the document is the draft guiding principles. The next version of the document will be updated with the guiding principles finalized by the subcommittees. Then the document moves into the actual action plan. Staff have taken 74 recommendations developed by the council and organized them into 5 groups for presenting related actions. The 5 groups as listed in this section, as well as the table of contents, is as follows. Establish cross-functional AI governance framework. Establish a centralized privacy program. Enhance security framework. Develop reference architecture. And the last one is address workforce needs. Staff have begun to lightly populate the first group to illustrate how the information will be presented. The category will be stated, and the group's recommendation numbers will be referenced. A brief narrative will further explain the group. Then the high-level executive actions will be listed with the recommended accountable role and estimated time frame to accomplish. Following the group of actions, the estimated needed resources and investments will be listed. The group will be concluded with an additional summarizing narrative that may indicate any dependencies or suggestions for success. I know I've shared a lot, so I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions or comments thus far. Okay. There is some additional light input in the other 4 groups. Again, just for illustration at this point, there's much more content to be included. Following the 5 groups is a high-level roadmap. This will be populated with high-level actions from each of the groups. The roadmap is intended to provide a visual representation of actions that may take place initially and others that may take place over some time. After the groupings are fully fleshed out, the concluding summary will provide suggestions for recommended next steps. Finally, because a final recommended action plan summarizes these 74 recommendations, the individual recommendations from the draft framework are provided in the appendix for continual reference and adherence. The council was very thoughtful in their word choices, and summarization can sometimes lose nuance and intent. Being mindful of that, we didn't want to lose the tremendous work of the council, so we felt it was important to keep it attached into the final product. With that, is there any additional feedback toward the outline? Okay. I know as we continue this conversation today, if you do think of something, we certainly will write that down, take the note. So we're going to go ahead and move into the part of the agenda as promised. Each council meeting, I always only want to leave space for any topics the council wants to discuss in addition to what's on the agenda. And so with that, feel free to raise your hand. Any questions, comments, open floor. Hector.
Yes, thank you. Hector Dominguez here. I just want to raise a few practical issues of implementing artificial intelligence solutions in government based on the experience that we are facing and also figuring out, honestly, at the city of Portland as local government. Uh, Again, given that local government in general has limited amount of resources, limited amount of budgets in general, and we are trying to be strategic in terms of how we implement and develop artificial intelligence solutions. And also, we want to follow similar guidelines as the one described in this in all these different documents and work that we have been doing collectively. I want to highlight, for instance, in terms of developing or finding, identifying solutions, the importance of creating algorithmic registries, for instance, having a list of authorized uses of artificial intelligence can actually help those who are going to use them and help transparency, for instance, help on creating accountability. Here, it's going to help also creating governance around those uses, particularly just for official use in general. That can create, those uses can be identified uh, through all these guidance and principles that are defined here. One of those principles that I think it needs a little bit more work, it's probably exploring what trust means, what ethical use of technology means. And one of those, at least the intersection with privacy, is the proportionality principle, basically using the right tools for the right solution. Sometimes we may fall into the trap of trying to resolve a very complex problem with the nearest solution that we get in front of us. However, without doing the proper due diligence. So having the right proportionality in terms of what we are going to resolve on and what tool we have available, and documenting that can be just nurture public trust and help staff that is going to be using those solutions in general. The other thing that I want to highlight, based on the notes that I prepare, is all these guidelines are really aspirational in many ways. And informed consent, particularly, is really difficult to get. You can imagine, in general, like people's information gets scrapped from the web with no consent unless informed consent. And then making informed consent operational, meaning that when somebody decides not to remove that consent, is practically impossible in many occasions. So one of the solutions that I think, well, we're trying to develop at the City of Portland is providing more literacy and informing people. And eventually we can get to that level of informed consent, and just keeping it as something aspirational. Uh, I'm looking forward for the next, but yeah, those are some of the notes that I have based on what we have in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hector. And I couldn't agree more with a lot of the stuff you said. And very important, and really, really appreciate your input there. Justice.
Yeah, thank you. Justice Eaglesmith. I'd like to also touch on the importance, kind of with what Hector was mentioning. It brought up also some notes that I have from reviewing the maybe being more specific in the importance of our recommendations towards interacting with native or sovereign nations. And so specifically, like Hector mentioned, if scraping data, using training data for a model, ensuring that one, native data is not used in that, or two, if a model is going to be interfacing, if, for example, like a large language model, a chatbot that's interfacing with tribes, ensuring that data is not collected without consent or things of that nature, and ensuring the practice of data sovereignty within those tribes and those communities. So I think that moving forward as we develop further, thinking about specific use cases for how we're interacting with, or how AI systems are interacting with sovereign nations.
Absolutely, Justice. And very good input. Then Cap. You are on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to call out the workforce component of our work, and point out that AI literacy is extremely important to consider. I don't know how much influence this body, this council will have with the legislature, but I wanted to point out an example from this week from the state of California, where they are trying to teach AI literacy in every grade in K through 12. And I think that becomes incredibly important for the workforce of the future, just having an understanding of AI systems, not necessarily developing them, but using them responsibly. I think that plays a role in our work too. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkat. It's a very important point, and I know in many of the subcommittee meetings, we've talked a lot about that very thing and how important it is to have that literacy throughout the organizations. Sabi.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on what Venkat said, not only to the workforce, but also to our legislatures as well, who are writing those policies and procedures. It's very important to educate them on the basics of AI and Gen AI so that they can, um, make these decisions knowing what we're talking about. So doing AI 101 for them will be very helpful as well.
Thank you, Sabi. Any others? Catherine, did you have anything you would like to add?
I think many of the council members have already shared it. I think one area in particular that came up for the equity subcommittee that I know has been something that's been really strategically important to enterprise information services as well is continuing to invest in establishing an enterprise privacy program. So finding ways to ensure that we have the programmatic and structural supports to engage in really thoughtful privacy activities around artificial intelligence.
Thank you. Okay. I'm leaving enough pause air in the room. See if there's any more. Justice.
Yes, thank you. Justice Eaglesmith. And I think that's something that came to mind that I think would be good to continue moving forward with is how we can potentially suggest the development of or supporting the education and development of AI within Oregon. So specifically, I saw like, for example, within California, obviously California, different financial resource situation, but they did make a recommendation for a data center, which I thought was an interesting take on encouraging the development within the state. And so as we talk about security being a really important aspect of this, certainly, I think that encouraging the growth in Oregon, I think there's a lot of demand for the government to be a part of encouraging the education and growth in the public sector.
Thank you for that, Justice. I think knowing my California, excuse me, counterpart pretty well, one of the challenges they have is the number of data centers that they have in the state there. Oregon, I think we're in pretty good. I guess it's better to be pretty lucky. We have our one state data center for the most part, but I know California is one of their things they're working through right now is the multiple, every agency having different data centers, and that is part of the thing that they're looking at. Very good point. More thoughts, discussion? Trying to at least get to 25 minutes here, so y'all got to help me out. If not, we do not have any public comment today. If we did have someone sign up, I'm sure the staff will let me know if it was last minute. But I have two more hands. This is wonderful. Hector and then Venkat.
Thank you. Hector Dominguez here. Just in terms of future conversations and highlighting, the importance of and the relevance so of course cybersecurity and all these conversations, of course, right? So we haven't really talked much about that in our discussions, but because it's a given. However, just for the record, mostly cybersecurity, it's its own beast, its own thing, and right now there are, as Catherine actually mentioned, there are a lot more, or the need for more collaboration between cybersecurity and privacy teams is becoming more and more important. I hope that the implementation of these efforts around artificial intelligence at the state can actually consider that. It's usually cybersecurity teams are usually very siloed and really focused on their job. And when we are pulling them from their job, trying to get some of the privacy discussion into those conversations, sometimes we don't talk in the same language necessarily. So there is a curve to get there, practically speaking, and slowly getting these two teams working together and collaborating. We are lucky that in the city of Portland, we have relatively small teams, but we are in constant collaboration, and that has been very fruitful in general.
Thank you for that, Hector. And if I could add on, and 100% agree with, we got to continue with the statewide approach around cyber, right? And continuing to help the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, where a lot of that collaboration comes together, and help continue to build on that, because it only helps everyone, right? The state organization as well as private, local government. And so I couldn't agree more with that statement. And I will personally continue to push for the whole state approach around cyber. FinCat.
Thank you, Terrence. And I just wanted to comment briefly on Justice's data center observation in California, and point out that managing a data center is really hard. And I look at the example. NVIDIA donated a supercomputer to University of Florida. The co-founders had an alumni association with the university, and so they developed it. They started a supercomputer facility there, and then on that same model, we have one at Oregon State as well. And that's a huge shot in the arm for the state, because we can attract researchers and faculty and students to Oregon, which is much needed. But the Florida center, from what I understand, isn't very well utilized, and that's why I say managing a data center is really hard. In hindsight, I think what would be better is allocating computing credits rather than providing a supercomputer. So from the state of Oregon's perspective, it makes a lot of sense to see or to analyze what is the data that is really sensitive, and we keep that on-prem versus using cloud computing credits for the rest that we could take away. So I think that's a conscious decision that we will have to make. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Venkat. Justice.
Yes, that was Justice Eaglesmith, and great point, Venkat. Something that I think I probably wasn't clear about is not necessarily a data center, but something that is valued to Oregonians. So certainly a data center, I'm sure, could be valuable in some regard, but I think there's other ways that we can benefit AI development within the state of Oregon through, we mentioned classes, things of that nature that are put forward to kind of educate the public sector, things like that. I've heard talk of opportunities of developing, I'm not exactly sure what they would be called, but maybe not necessarily an agency, but things that are focused on helping AI development within the private sector, guidance, kind of like the small business administration that exists with helping small businesses develop within the state. I think things like that might be valuable to help guide and foster that development for people that are interested in starting an organization or a new venture, but aren't sure how to leverage safely protect their data. And I think that would be beneficial for Oregonians in general if we had if someone was starting an organization and they're collecting all this data, maybe they're providing a lot of value to Oregonians, but they don't have the technical background to know how to manage their data. I think the state could step in there and provide that expertise in that situation. So I'm sure there's some holes there, but just something to think about how we could help foster value there.
Thank you, Justice. If there are no others, have we had any last minute public comment? Shirley?
Chairwood, thank you, Chairwoods. We've had no one sign up to provide public comment. However, Catherine is prepared to review the timeline.
All right, thank you. Catherine.
Yeah, thank you, Terrence, or thank you, Chairwood. So we did attach an updated timeline for the council packet for folks to review. I think of note are just we're in our kind of home stretch for getting the framework completed and the action plan completed. So you'll see on the timeline quite a bit of time for drafting and writing of the framework. We do currently have a council meeting tentatively planned for January. It's possible, depending on our drafting timeline, we may have to adjust that. So folks should be prepared that we might either have a meeting at the end of January or just have a February meeting. But primarily what we're focusing on right now is finalizing drafting of the completed action plan and framework and making sure that there's plenty of time for council review before any of our final meetings or our formal adoption of the framework. So we just wanted to make sure folks had the timeline in their packet and could see and ask any questions if they arise.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions or comments on the timeline? Seeing heads shake no. Okay, with no public comment, if there's nothing else, I will go ahead and conclude our agenda, which we've worked through today, and adjourn the meeting. And happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Happy holidays.